Uh-oh, now you done did it. How's everybody doing? My name is Anthony Brian Logan, and today we got to talk about Whoopi Goldberg getting into some hot water due to her Holocaust comments on The View. I'll explain. We got to back up a little bit just to give proper context so we understand what's happening here and so we're on the same page with each other. Now, there's a book called Mouse, M-A-U-S, that's going to be removed from Tennessee curriculum because it contains nudity. Now, the book is a story about the Holocaust. So the ladies on The View were asking the question, is it racist for Tennessee to take that book out because it's dealing with the Holocaust and they want to use nudity as an excuse? Is it racist? Now, Whoopi Goldberg, maybe she doesn't really understand what racism is, or she sees it from her point of view only. But she's like, nah, it's not racist because that's white on white. You know, fight amongst yourselves. So for that comment right there, she got into a ton of hot water. Now, before I go any further, let's roll the clip. In this clip, you're going to see her talk about how the Holocaust and about race is just about, you know, white on white. You know, it is what it is. But after we get done with that, I'll come back. I'll talk about what she said there. Then I'll give you the rest of my 2 cents and my deep, detailed analysis. And then I'll wrap it on up with a nice bow on top. So without further ado, let's go ahead and roll it.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is white people doing it to white people.
Yeah.
So this is, you know, y'all go fight amongst yourselves, but don't, you know.
Well, and look at what.
Well, also, if you're going to do this, then let's be truthful about it, because the Holocaust isn't about race. No, it's not about race.
Ethnicity.
No,
it's about
a
different race.
But it's not about race. It's not about race.
What is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man. That's what it's about.
But it's about white supremacy. It's about
but
going
it's
after
it's
Jews
not about
and race.
But these are two white groups of people.
Well, how do we have to black people
see them as white?
But you're missing the point. You're missing the point. The minute you turn it into race, it goes down this alley. Let's talk about it for what it is. It's how people treat each other. It's a problem. It doesn't matter if you're black or white, because black, white, Jews, everybody eats each other. So if you're uncomfortable, if you hear about Mouse, should you be worried? Should your child say, oh my God, I wonder if that's me? No, that's not what they're gonna say. They're gonna say, I don't wanna be like that.
Well, hopefully.
I want to be cool.
Yeah,
And
most kids, they don't want to be cruel.
No, they don't.
And we're living in an era where people are comparing vaccine cards to the yellow stars, where people are comparing vaccinations to what Anne Frank went through.
Yeah.
So it is necessary for kids to learn about the Holocaust.
Learn about man's inhumanity to man, however it exposes itself. I have to cut you off.
I just want to say that Mouse was banned and it flew to top 20 of Amazon's rules last week of charts.
Yes.
The more you ban it, the more we want to read it.
All right, so you saw that, you heard that. Now, there's a lot we got to really get through here. First things first, will she be fired for this? Just straight away, will she be fired for this? I'm not really sure. She could be fired because she is in trouble. I'm reading sources and whatnot, and they're saying, hey, close sources are saying that she's in deep trouble. She might get fired, and she's apologized, I think, twice now. They had her on Goldberg show. It might have been that same day. Like, she did The View that day, and then that night she was on Goldberg, kind of apologizing, but not really. She was more explaining herself. And what she said, without getting too deep into it, she was like, well, I'm black, so from my point of view, it's not racism in the way that I would think, because in America, from her point of view, if the Klan are coming down the street and I'm there next to my Jewish friend, I have to run away because I can't pass for, I guess, being white. I'm not white, but the Jewish person could stay right there and it probably wouldn't be a problem. That was her mentality. She sees things based on an American black, white point of view, nothing else. Okay. Now, what she's saying might make sense to an ignorant person, but when you zoom out, it does not make any sense. Okay. So that wasn't really an apology, but getting back to the whole thing about them treating her with kid gloves, Goldberg was like, well, you do know now that it's about race, right? You know better now. Like, he was coaching her through it. Now imagine if Marjorie Taylor Greene had said something like that, or anybody that is somewhat affiliated with the right. Even if it was Joe Rogan saying something like that, who was not a conservative, but he says things that are kind of quote unquote controversial. If it was anybody like that, then they would be dragged through the mud. And if a Joe Rogan worked for The View, or if MTG worked for The View, they'd be gone. They'd be out of there instantly. But I'm kind of getting off track, so I digress. The whole point is that she kind of apologized on Colbert, and it was kind of doubling down. And she apologized again on The View, I think the next day, talking about, I was mistaken, I'm sorry, and, I always stand with the Jewish community. I think her actual name is like Karen Walker or something like that. Some really just random, basic black girl Southern name. But she calls herself Whoopi Goldberg, which is more of a Jewish name. So she's kind of relying upon that. Like, hey, I've always been an ally to the Jewish community. Okay, so she's very apologetic. However, the apology wouldn't really matter depending upon who you are. Now, let's get into it, though. Let's get into the whole thing about, is it racism? Well, first of all, if you have books that have nudity and other weird stuff, I'm not necessarily against taking them out of school if it doesn't really make any sense for kids to have that kind of, information in front of them. As long as I understand what happened in the real sense and they're not being shielded from history, then I have no problem. So I don't really see the racism part or anything else like that. That's first thing as far as the actual book being removed from the curriculum. But the second thing is, when you're talking about the Jews and whatnot in World War II Germany, that was about race, but not in a way that you would think about here in the U.S. if you don't know any better. If all you know is black and white racism, like 1960s civil rights, cafe counter, back of the bus, if you only think that way, then no, that wouldn't be racism. But if you understand the way the world is, if you understand ethnic conflict, which far in a way blows away any kind of racial conflict, you will understand that the whole thing about World War II Germany was an ethnic thing, and it was most certainly about who you are and your identity and your other, and you're interfering and you're causing the problem, and we blame it, pointing the finger at you. It's the same way somebody would complain about a white person being hateful or bigoted toward a black person, or vice versa. A black person being bigoted, hateful toward a white person is the exact same thing when you're talking about the Jews in World War II Germany and other parts of the world. It's also the same thing that's going on right now with the Han Chinese and the Uyghurs. To the average person, if you put a Uyghur right next to a Han Chinese, you're not telling the difference. They look the exact same. So it wouldn't make sense for anyone to say, oh, that's not really a racial thing. That's not really anything. That's Chinese on Chinese. Let them figure it out. That's not quite that way. Okay, you have the Han Chinese and the Uyghurs. Different culture, language, religion, everything. They're not the same people. They look the exact same, but they're not. And there's a conflict going on, maybe even a genocide happening from one side to the other. It's the exact same thing that was happening in World War II Germany. And then you have other conflicts all over the world. The Hutus and the Tutsis in Rwanda, Uganda, that area, maybe even Kenya. Okay, they look the exact same, but they're not. Go to Nigeria, that is not really a country. That's something that the Europeans put together as a country, but it's not really a country. The regions are wildly different. When you go all the way to the north, you're like basically in the Sahara Desert, which is night and day different from the south when you have like marshland, the Hausa, the Igbo, the Yoruba. They're way different languages, culture, religion, food, everything. They look the same, they sound the same, but they're not the same. Matter of fact, go to Europe to go back to the whole white versus white thing. Now, do you know that the people in Turkey are considered white, or how should I say, they're considered Caucasian? Because that's like the old Ottoman Empire. That was the center of it. Anatolia, all of that was right there in the Ottoman Empire. Now, the Ottoman Empire, Turkey was in the middle, and it went all the way out to like Saudi Arabia, Lebanon, all of that, like way out in the western part of the Middle East, and then it went to like Southern Europe and the current day Balkan states. You have what's that? Macedonia, Albania, all of that was part of the Ottoman Empire. Now look at a person like Conor McGregor, right? The boxer. He is a white person from Europe and Ireland, of course. Then you have Enes Kanter, who really is a white person from Turkey. Now, do they look anything alike? No, they don't. But they're both white. So if there was any kind of conflict between them, would it not be a race thing? Like if the Turks, which they do go to places like Germany, and there's any kind of discrimination against them because of how they look and their culture and language and religion and whatnot, that's the same thing as what's happening between blacks and whites and blacks and Hispanics and blacks and everything else. Over here in the States, everything's more about color because we're kind of an experiment where we have different places around the world represented here. Africa, Europe, Asia, everywhere right here. Native American, all in one pot. It's not quite like that in other parts of the world. There's differences based upon your ethnicity, your language, your culture, religion, etc. People are discriminated, hurt, killed, whatnot, based on that all the time. That's been the case from the beginning of time. Okay, matter of fact, go to somewhere like Australia before the Europeans came. The Aboriginals, there was 900 Aboriginal tribes. And if one tribe stepped foot into the other tribe's territory, they get killed instantly, right on the spot, immediately. So it's not about race. It's not about differences. I mean, come on. At a certain point, Whoopi Goldberg just spoke from a place of ignorance. But this is typical, though, for a lot of normies in America. So I don't think she really meant that in a malicious way. I don't believe so. I think she's just ignorant. And this is part of the problem by not having necessarily dissenting voices on The View or mainstream media in general. People that are ignorant are allowed to be ignorant. Nobody's being challenged. Nobody's being educated. It's all just one point of view and that's it. Okay. Her co-host kind of got it together and tightened her up. But usually that's not really the case. Usually they're on one page, one accord with one message. You know, the whole thing about the book, they were trying to paint Tennessee as some kind of racist place and don't send your kids there and avoid it. The Klan's still active. That was their whole goal, right? Now, if you had a true conservative on there, they fight back against that, but they don't want that. They want one message only. But having one message, one voice, that kind of creates that creates a situation where there's no innovation. There's nobody being able to press forward. That's why in communist societies, as I close, ain't no innovation. How can you have innovation or any kind of new creation when all the ideas are suppressed from a central level, when nothing different is allowed other than what the powers that be want? But I think I'll leave that right there for now. And what say you? How do you feel about what was said on The View from Whoopi Goldberg? Whatever your thoughts are, let me know in the comments below. You guys pretty much know where I'm at. I think she's just ignorant, which is typical for people on the left on television. They get caught up in their echo chambers. They don't hear anything from anyone else. They have been brainwashed this whole thing about race, that it's only about blacks and whites and nothing else, and there's no other kind of way to look at things, and the American view is the only view and all this and that. It's just not the reality. And once you break away from that thinking, then you understand the whole situation. Okay, everybody wanted to blame the white man for slavery. Meanwhile, blacks were enslaved in Africa by other blacks. But see, the issue is that they're not the same. They're not the same people. You have blacks that's from a different tribe enslaved by other tribes. So it's not like, okay, you my black brother, we got to be the same because of our skin color. It's more about your language, your culture, your ethnicity, your religion. Those ties bind you rather than your skin color. And sometimes those differences divide you. It's not all about your skin. But whatever your thoughts are, please let me know in the comments below. And that's all I got to say for this video. If you like what you heard, please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. Peace.